What are your expectations for LSU this year? What are your expectations? If you're in Lincoln, Nebraska, if you're in Tempe, Arizona, you know who Brian Kelly is. You know LSU. You've got a feel on him. But definitely, if you're in New Iberia, if you're in Alexandria, if you're down there in New Orleans or Baton Rouge, what do you expect? Wins and losses. What do you expect for LSU this year? I did not expect to be doing a segment on LSU tonight. Full disclosure, it was not in our midterm and short-term plans. But then the eye Josh rings the other day. And I'm outdoors, getting some good old vitamin D, and a close dear friend of the program and a very hardcore LSU fan is on the other end of the line. And I hear some distress in his voice. And he's saying, you know what I wanted this year? I wanted sort of a consequence-free year. I don't have high expectations. I wanted to just enjoy LSU football and Saturdays for what they are. And I wanted to get back to expectations next year because I know we got a lot to turn over and we got a culture we got to reinvent and we got to go from doing it the O way to doing it the Brian Kelly way. And I'm on board with that. I just know it's not an overnight, snap your fingers, magic sort of fix. I said, do you need me for any of this? Like, what, you're asking me a question? What are you doing? He said, well, here's my fear. My fear is that the expectation level, the hype bubble, if you will, it's inflating a little bit too much. And all of a sudden, I see us going 8-4, and I call that a great year, and I'm worried that there may be a little bit too big a chunk of our fan base that's going to turn 8-4 into a disappointment, and I don't want that. Can you talk about it on the show? And I said, hey, look, who would I be if not a person who anyone could pull a string from and get a segment put in Late Kick? So let's talk about this, shall we? I go over to my people over on go247.com today, because anytime I say I'm going to talk to my LSU folks, those are my LSU folks, and I said, what about this? I just put it on the message board and I just let it breathe, and I think it's like half a dozen pages into the thread now. I said, you give me either your expectations, wins and losses, or you just let me know what, in terms of even intangibles, would be success this year. And I was pleasantly surprised. We did get a healthy amount of 8-4. Now, the over-under in Vegas is 7, but most every fan base is going to have expectations a little bit higher than the Vegas over-under win total because they factor in things that you don't want to factor in. They factor in possibility of injury, possibility of all kinds of things going awry that you refuse to acknowledge in the preseason. And that's okay. That's normal. And 8-4 was pretty normal in that thread. But there were several 9-3s. There were plenty of 10-2s, more than I could count on both hands. So they're out there. And then we had some fringe plus 10 wins. And so I really want to talk for just a second now, I love you guys, with our LSU brethren that are in the 10-win range and above. And maybe you 9 winners need to pay close attention, but you 10 winners really, you need to set down what you're doing and you need to turn the volume up. Summer is a dangerous time of year. Lightning, flash floods, etc. But also, summer is a dangerous time of year because we have a combination of several things that have bitten many a college football fan before. You have the usual off-season amnesia, and that's just where we tend to forget the lessons this sport teaches us every year, because we have preview magazine season where all those depth charts look bright and shiny and there is not a red Sharpie through any name. Everyone's healthy, everyone's good to go, everyone's added 7 to 10 pounds of muscle, and also we have media days, don't we? Where all we do is talk. And magically, teams feel like they got better since spring and nothing's happened. No football has happened. Not a single pad has been put on. No popping since spring. Yet teams all of a sudden get better. Your expectation goes from maybe 6 wins to we could win 9. What? What are you talking about? I just talked to you in April. Well, that is summer for you. It's a dangerous time of year around college football. So my word of caution, and the word of caution from a friend of mine, through me, I'm just the middleman here. You wouldn't get mad at a guy for just delivering drugs from one person to another, so don't get mad at me for this. There are some things at LSU that are worth being excited about. This could be the best wide receiver stable. That was a very common refrain on the Go247 message board today. I saw one of you say, hey, when is the last time the best wide receiver stable in this conference struggled to make a bowl game, struggled to win 7 games? I got you. I get what you're saying. And there are 3 quarterbacks down there, and if any one of them pans out, then Brian Kelly could do some really good things. That defensive front is the envy of a lot of college football. Ditto for the linebacker core. Secondary, who knows? who in the world knows? If a freshman left tackle works out, that offensive line could greatly exceed expectations. I know the talking points. I get it. Now, let me counter those. We're playing ping pong here for just a second. Do not overestimate how hard it is for a new staff to acclimate in the SEC. It's the hardest conference to acclimate yourself into, and it's not a head coach and a bunch of dudes who he just pulled from around the conference. You got quite a few of them who have not coached down here before. That's not long-term detriment, but it is short-term learning curve. Keep that in mind. The second thing is this secondary is indeed a myth. I know they went and got a lot of them because they feel like they can play in the SEC, but the bottom line is they didn't want to have to go get any of them. They had to do that out of necessity. You got some guys who can throw the ball down here. It's actually a pretty deep year in the league at the quarterback position, so just keep that in mind. The third thing, for all the names at quarterback, there's a reason that there are 3 names and we don't have a clear one, and then saying things like, boy, our second and third string looks really good too. The reason we don't have it figured out is because there's not a surefire number 1 there. We've seen Miles Brennan play before. We're confident that he can adequately serve as the starting QB there. Jaden Daniels, different skill set entirely. I would say the same thing. We're confident that he would not be a train wreck or anything like that. Nussmeier, his best days are clearly ahead of him. I'm as high on him as anyone, outside of his parents probably. But we don't have a clear-cut, bona fide SEC starter there. We hope we do. That's what fall camp will find out for us. But we don't know that yet. So in your world, obviously, if you're an LSU fan, you figure out a path where at least one of them, if not more than one of them, works out for you. There is an alternate universe where we just have to deal with average quarterback play this year. It has happened before. Also, and this is the one I really want to focus on, which I hope we don't have to talk about, but I fear we probably will. You got to factor in the unseen. There's a lot of intangible, a lot of unquantifiable. And if you were listening to Brian Kelly, if you've listened to him at all, he keeps using that word culture, and he keeps talking about overturning it. We interviewed him. I was talking to him one-on-one last week, and I said, you keep talking about overturning a culture. No one ever does that comfortably. No one ever goes from doing things the way Orgeron did them to doing things the way you do them with no hiccups. And he acknowledged, you're right. It's comfortable now because we haven't played games yet. But when we play games, it'll be real. Now, here's the way this usually goes. For those of you who are suffering from amnesia, here's the way I expect the LSU season to go. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I think they'll start out pretty well. I would, at the moment, pick them to beat Florida State. That's not official. I just, at the moment, for the sake of argument, let's say they beat them. They start out 2-0, 3-0. There's the schedule right here, 4-0. Let's say they start out 4-0 and they're going into Auburn, and then that tougher stretch starts from there on. You don't find out at that point, really, where the warts are, because everyone's happy to buy in as long as you're winning. But there are losses somewhere along the way on this schedule. I'm not even going to pick out which ones they are. I'm saying when they start to happen, when the bounce of the ball doesn't go your way, when the turnover battle's -2 against you and you lose as a 4-point favorite one Saturday, then you get back in that locker room, then you get back on the bus, on the plane, you go home, guys have Sunday to text each other, and slowly but surely, the way that they used to do things is the way some guys will want to fall back. Those are the things some guys will want to fall back on. It is almost inevitable when you're trying to overturn a culture because there's some residue that's left over. Doesn't matter when you win. When you lose is when the stuff starts to bubble up. And if you lose a few more games, then you start to find out, it turns out there are some guys still here that really do not serve the long-term best interest of what we're trying to do as a program. Those guys won't be there next year. But the point is, you inevitably still have some guys around there that are much more conditioned to doing things the old way, that probably aren't best cut out to do things the new way. You can't overturn it completely overnight. Brian Kelly knows that. I think we'll find that out this year. Now, that means they're not going 12-0. What we're talking about is, can they still go 9-3 with that? I don't know. They may be able to. What I'm saying is, and this is where my personal focus is with them, this year, since it's year one under that staff, is almost about 2023 to me more than it is 2022. LSU this year, I'm worried about filtration and I'm worried about recruiting. And the bottom line is, there could be some issues behind the scenes. There could be. I'm speaking generically. This is not inside information. I don't know anything about any guy down there that's giving them trouble right now. I'm speaking from 50,000 feet. If losses start to happen, if there's some bumps in the road, it's still not the worst thing in the world. It is a natural filtration process. You are finding out who the best long-term solutions are in your locker room. And you're finding out the guys that you don't want to be in the foxhole with. And you're finding out things that may suck right now, but are greatly going to assist you in 2023 and beyond. That's the first part of it. That's why sometimes losses in year one aren't the worst thing in the world. That's what I'm saying. And also in the other compartment over there, every week, recruiting. Every single week, you're putting a product on the field that you're using to try and win a game, but also trying to sell a vision to a new crop of talent, because those guys, absolutely, you do have your choice of. So you're bringing in 100% of guys, hopefully, that want to do things your way. That's what this year is about for me. So what my buddy was talking about, and what I kind of echo in a general sense, is there is a path where LSU goes 7-5 this year, and it's successful. Not because you love going to the Liberty Bowl in late December, but if you go 7-5 and in the process weeded out some parts of your program that didn't need to be there, that maybe wouldn't have weeded themselves out if you went 9-3, what sets you up better long term? I know no one wants to win 7 games when they can win 9 games. I'm saying if it does come to a 7-5 season, this is the kind of situation where there could still be a lot of positives in that 7-5. Now, if Georgia goes 7-5 this year, I'm not having this conversation with them. But if LSU or Florida goes 7-5 this year, there is this path, just like Nick Saban. Nick Saban won 7 games his first year and had to win a bowl game to get to 7. They found out some things about that program, and there were a lot of faces that weren't around the next year. And I think we all remember what happened the next year and then the 13 or 14 years after that. So I took the call, I delivered the message, and I hope you heard every word.